Hi there. This is Michael Murdad, and it's time to share our spiritual insights with Michael Murdad. So thanks for joining us. So today we're talking about relationships on the rebound. Now, I could really make this a 2-minute discussion because the concept of relationship rebounds is fairly simple. It's addictive oriented, it's reactive oriented, it's compensatory, it's anything but healthy. Now, before you get all frustrated with me and disconnect, let's be clear. I know that there are some positive things or things that feel positive about having rebound relationships. But, in a sense, rebound relationships could be more equated not with true love, but more like menopause or something. It is. It's when the body, the person, their soul is compensating and going through a challenging period. You're thinking it's not challenging. You're thinking it's a blissful period. It just feels that way because you're going through stimulation. Well, there's all kinds of drugs that could do stimulating things. That doesn't mean they're healthy. You could get electric shock therapy and it might feel kind of stimulating. That doesn't mean it's wonderful. So these are just my bizarre ways of expressing things. But, please understand, I mean it respectfully. There's this idea of rebound relationships. It should be pretty clear to most people that those are not healthy. Some people have said, maybe you, maybe somebody you know, well, I was just on the rebound. The tone of that, the context of that is not usually, guess what? I was on the rebound. That doesn't usually make people go, wonderful. Usually the connotation is, oh, bummer. What went wrong? They expect the other shoe to drop now. So what happens is, like menopause, like other periods in our like going through midlife crisis, these are all areas, times in our life, phases, cycles where we are sort of soul searching and looking at ourselves. It doesn't mean it's always really therapeutically looking, but it's when the soul is going through a cycle saying, what have I done? What haven't I done? What haven't I done? Let me compensate with it in midlife crisis. What have I done, and so forth. It's all about compensatory. And so for a lot of women, it's I put my life aside, and I raised a family, because statistics would confirm that women more than men, once getting into a committed relationship, women more than men start nesting. They really seem to do more work on the family, the household, the kids, taking care of the kids, this sort of thing. The men are still staying a little bit footloose, even if it doesn't look like it. And I'm not judging one or the other. I don't, it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying that that's the stereotype, and the stats tell us that that's true, even in this day and age. Now, that's neither good nor bad, but my point is that the gender that tends to more put things on hold. I was going to go to school, but then I got pregnant and had to raise kids. I was going to but then there's a lot of that. Or, where the male's goals seem to have taken precedence a lot of times. And some of that's just fine. Some of that's just fine because, if I'm a male and I'm in a relationship, I would love to just say, what would you like to do? What would you like to do? You don't have to go into work. I would love to provide. Not in a codependent bargain, but more as just, it's a loving, beautiful thing to do. And if I found a person that was a wealthy woman of some kind, it said, I want to do that for you. I want to take care of you. What would you like to do? That would be wonderful. I wouldn't say, oh, that's not allowed because I'm a male. It doesn't matter, male or female. It's just wonderful when we take care of each other, whomever that may, whomever may make such a choice. So rebound relationships are often, or typically, they are the years of repressed stuff, which is what menopause is. But years of repressed stuff, even illnesses, are not typically onset immediate. They're triggering stuff that was already there. And that includes cancer. Cancer isn't sudden. Cancer is basically building over time. And a stressful situation now could be the final straw. And then it activates. But rebound relationships, and it's kind of funny, Michael's comparing rebound relationships with cancer. Well, they are. They're very cancerous in a sense. So an illness has taken place. A woman or man a person has repressed their dreams, their desires, and in romantic relationships, one person just might not feel complete anymore. They might not feel like they're seen or heard. They may not feel like their needs are being fulfilled, whether it's romantically, intimately, affectionately, sexually, whatever it happens to be. And so they're just putting it on hold and putting it on hold. Whether they're putting things on hold because they have to take care of the kids so long that they get exhausted and go to bed. There's still a frustration that's going to be building over time. Or whether it's that their partner doesn't give them much time. And then they think, well, why don't I just go get my own needs met? No, because again, stats would tell you a woman less often would just kind of give up and have a fling on the side. It happens, but stats would confirm not as often. So a woman, the conscience, the sensitivity of nervous system and energy systems, she's a little more protective. Not as much as that she once was, but more protective of her being, her heart, and her womb. So, yes, we could say that's changed. Women have found equality. Women have simply found some of the same stupidity that men have in this particular thing. I'm not saying all men. I'm just saying when people are careless about these kinds of things, if you're in a committed relationship. Now, if you're not in a committed relationship, you can even have a partner and not be in a committed monogamous relationship. And I think it's already defined what you're allowed to do. You can do whatever because it's not committed. I just think to honor whatever you are saying you're doing. If you say committed, then that's what it should be. Or just say we're in a partnership, but it's not a committed or not monogamous commitment or whatever, and at least it's honest, and at least it gives somebody else the idea or the right to say, that worked fine for a while, but I really want that now, and so I think I'm going to get that from you, and if not, then I'm going to move on to a different relationship for myself. So I'm saying that a person represses and represses and represses. They're not getting their needs met, and a lot of times that builds with it emotion, frustration, anger, rage, and neediness even. What's worse is when one partner, whichever gender it is, and it could be gay or straight relations, doesn't matter, but when one person's kind of like, I'm not going to give in, I'm not going to cheat, and they do all that. In the meantime, they're not having their needs met either. That's called being conflicted. It's not just the traditional term for conflicted, but you have conflict inside. You're frustrated, but yet you're taking the hit. Okay, and you bear it. Now, if 25, 35, 45 years later, it could be even 5 years later, you go and the relationship comes to an end, you could have that frustration wanting to be met, dealt with, vented, and that would be rebound energy. I'm on the rebound. Not everybody that ends a relationship is on the rebound. You could say they are because that's sort of the general definition. I'm now rebounding from one direction, now I'm bouncing back to the world, back to the dating pool or whatever. But really, more specifically, rebound relationship would mean I'm really frustrated. I'm coming out of a relationship and I'm in reactive mode. Now, I was saying that this can happen with someone after just so many years, but it's even worse if they're faithful for 40 years, 80 years, 10 years, whatever it is, and their partner, they find out, was not. They weren't the last 5 years. They weren't ever faithful or whatever. Now the person that was on the seeming rebound, that has compounded many times more. Many times more. I'm not just kind of, okay, now that ended, I guess I'm going to take a break and then maybe, hopefully, do some personal work and then maybe re-enter the dating world a little. That's kind of how it should look. But the person that would say, and I found out that all those years I gave myself, I gave my body, which is now 20 years older, 40 years older than when I met them. It's now been taxed energetically, muscles. I'm not toned like I used to be. My womb isn't the same. My breasts aren't the same. My facial muscles aren't the same. My tensions are different, and my, on and on. My emotions, I feel tired. So there's all that. And you go, oh, but he's off having a great time. I guess I can do that. The guys, for whatever reasons I won't go into, seem to be able to get away with that a little bit easier. And if I'm a woman and that's happening to me, I'm going to feel pretty ticked off. I'm going to feel cheated by him, by the universe. I'm going to feel deceived. I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to feel angry, but I'm going to feel hurt. All kinds of things, all kinds of emotions. Then something happens where you say, wait a minute. If he can do it, I can do it. Spoken like a truly resentful person, but it sounds empowering, doesn't it? I can do it. And you're going to always have some, and you got to forgive my terminology sometimes, guys, but you're always going to have some idiotic girlfriends that are going to say, yes, you should do that. And they're all, we've done that and we have I'm married and I'm doing it. You have all that kind of, and all they're saying is, we don't have a clue with what to do with those feelings, so we also vent it. And it'd be great if you do it too, because then we won't look so bad for doing it ourselves. So just because you have women without any scruples telling you to join them in, their behaviors, unhealthy, addictive behaviors, and the poor things, they're just going to get hurt. And I'm a counselor, guys. I'm a spiritual counselor, and I've been doing counseling work probably longer than any counselor you've ever met. I also have worked with more human beings than probably any 5 counselors combined, their clientele combined. And that's not why I know what I know, but it helps. I also know because these things just are revealed to me, but I have experience. If that's what you need to believe, I have to make such firm statements that I make. I'm saying to you that in my clientele, I can't tell you how many are people that have come to me. If 10 have ever come to me that said, and I'm just using a number, it could be 1,000. If 10 ever came to me and said, I've been doing a rebound relationship. I did one, I'm doing one, I'm thinking of doing one. I'm telling you that 9, if not 10 times out of 10, there's sadness, hurt, anger, guilt, shame. It's not usually like complete clarity. I do not look upon the face of someone who looks like they're shining golden light from God, just emanating from their eyes, their face. Their countenance is just like, wow, glorified. No, it's not what I usually see. And you guys know that if you really think about it. And I'm not saying that it's completely wrong. So let me give you the flip side. The good news is when you're on the rebound and you're kind of wanting to come out, what's nice about it is that you're at least not dead. You're not choosing to die. Metaphorically, I don't just mean literally. You're not choosing to just curl up in bed and stay there incapacitated. That's good. You're trying to feel again. That's good. You're even thinking some of it might be fun, to go out with friends. And that, I think that's cool too. That's fine. The more it involves drinking or getting stoned in any way, the more it involves things that you don't even know it involves, like anger, then the more off it goes. The less it's in any way a form of therapy. I know that there are counselors out there that even tell men and women, you got to bounce back, you got to get out there. And that's not advice I typically give, not in the same form they're giving it. Why? Because they're wrong. They're simply wrong, telling you to go and do something that could hurt you and send you into therapy with someone else again. That's not good. You don't give unscrupulous, you don't give unhealthy advice to people that could cause them major harm and justify it. Well, it's nature. It's what you have needs. Oh God, that phrase just, wow. But you have needs and they need filled. Who has needs? The God self has needs? You better try dating a Buddhist, a real one, not the fake ones. There's a difference. There's the the Sedona kinds of guys that are, hey, I'm a Buddhist. It's you get some of that in this new agey kind of world. People with all the pseudo, I believe in crystal power. How about you? I was at a conference once, and this was amazing because this was a conference where I was a keynote speaker, and there was someone else that was one of the main speakers, and it probably makes it sound pretty low, the pool of speakers. There were some really well-known speakers, but there was one that was getting to be well-known in the 90s as a channel. And this person said, I'm of an alien species. I won't even say anything about that, but I'm an alien species, and all the beings of the higher dimensions are still channeling through me. And there's all kinds of people going, oh, wow, this is amazing. Listen to this guy. High dimensions, whoa, he's got to be good. And then, it's like, and one of my missions on Earth is to help propagate a higher dimensional species, blending Earthlings with higher dimensional beings. You probably know where this is going already. And so if any of you would like to make love, potentially contributing to this new species, I'm here. And believe it or not, he had takers. This is at a conference, probably 1,000 people attended, and he had takers. And I'm just like, wow, that is bizarre. How could anybody fall for it? Now I know why they would fall and how they could fall for that. Their emptiness is so vast that anything makes them feel better. God, anything. Just look at me and I'm going to feel more complete. Like, that's how messed up they could be. It's very sad. It's not just disgusting and whatever. It's sad too, for both parties. But it's bogus. So I was talking about that because I was playing into the real things, guys. Not the fake spiritual, but the real. So there are people you can meet, and don't fall for every little thing, every little story. Don't listen to your friends tell you ought to go get stoned and get laid, that term they use. You need to get laid, girlfriend. Like, really, you need to get lost. Just tell them that. And the God you is not incomplete. The God you does not need to get laid. The God you doesn't need anything that humans would tell you need. The God you is complete. Why are you not feeling the God self? Well, right now, because I'm ending a relationship, I'm mad they did this, then let's talk about that. You mad? Right, pound on my chest if you want to get some of that out. Pound on a pillow if you'd like to get some out. You done? You want to wrestle a little? Let's get some of that out. How about crying? Scream into a pillow. Move the energy therapeutically. What your friends are trying to do, it looks like it's successful, but it's actually, a lot of these gals will say to me, and I went out and I became promiscuous. Oh, that's really therapeutic. Not. Some of them will say, well, I had a one-night stand. Only once, but I got a disease, or whatever it might be. That's not to imply it's always bad news. Some, one in 100, say, I actually felt really good about it. I got it out of my system. I got over it. I see it for what it is. Done. And it feels fairly complete. But that's fairly rare in the ratio here. The positives, though, is that you could have somebody, help you to feel alive. You could hire, as strange as it sounds, a male or female escort and say, absolutely no sex in any form. I would like someone just to play the role of respectful. And that sounds weird. I mean, am I like selling prostitution of some kind? I don't know if that's how it sounds to you. But I'm telling you that if you hire somebody to be a certain way and you use, a healthy kind of maybe a person or a healthy system that you tap into, I don't know, where you would find, certainly not in seedy newspapers, but if you could find something like that, again, you're hiring them to be. Now, I've known gals who have hired gay male friends to be their safe others. Would you act like my date? Sure. I think it's great. The reason I'm saying it's great is because you get to go through the motions of being alive, yet it's all in a contained, safe, contained environment. And I think that's pretty cool because it gives you some movement of that energy without putting you at risk or in danger. Now, if you just go to a nightclub, have some drinks, and say, well, I'm just going to select this guy to be that, that guy isn't being hired in terms of an integrity, a contract to do and not do certain things. He isn't there to be therapeutic with you. He's there to use you. And any other term you want to use for it. That's just the reality behind it. So rebound relationships are fairly dangerous because you're coming in charged. You're already an accident waiting to happen. I've told this story before, but there's around 1990, I went across the street from my office. There was a nightclub, and I've never been to a nightclub, even when I was a kid or 20s or whatever. Never been to a nightclub. So there was a nightclub, and my life had fairly well fallen apart because it was kind of a dark night of the soul. So I went to listen to music because I thought, well, I like music. I wonder what music's happening this generation, And I went and listened and thought, oh, some songs are kind of cool. And I liked making friends with the band and helping them pack up their equipment, just being of service, but not telling anybody who I was, but I just did this. But one night, I went to listen to the music, and there was a small group of gals, maybe 5 or so, 6. And they were girlfriends that went out, and they went out specifically to bring one girl out who had gotten, her heart broken. So she was not wanting to go out, and they drag her out. You got to go out and get laid. I didn't know all that at the time, but this is what had happened. So one of them finally explains it to me. I think it's the sister of the girl. This girl could be watching for all I know. And the sister said, my sister got her heart broken, and so we brought her out. But we would really appreciate it. You seem like a really nice guy, and would you mind dancing with her and spending some time, give her some love, give her some energy? Okay. How can I be helpful? And I know it may sound like I'm going to do a guy thing or something, but no, I typically or generally kept my wits about me in these situations. So I said, okay. So I danced with her and sat down, and then they asked me to do it, and I danced a few dances. Eventually, she's sitting down after each dance, and she's getting a little tipsy. So now she's kind of staggering, and dancing with her, and middle of the song, one moment she finally just kind of leans towards me and looks me in the eyes with her eyes kind of half open, looks me in the eyes and says, I really want to. And she propositioned me. And I was like, what? And she repeated it, and I was like, what? Because the music's loud, but I'm also, I don't know, a little bit naive in a sense. And especially at whatever, late 20s or whatever it was. And I'm like, what? Like, first of all, even if it was a fantasy, it's like, this can't be happening, right? But instead, whatever it seems to be for me, it wasn't computing. And I'm like, wow, like this is what people do in nightclubs? Like, wow, this is a trip. No wonder they all go to these places. So, I go, okay, come here. And then I leaned forward and said something in her ear, and then took her to her table and left. I just split to keep her safer. Not because I was tempted, but to make a statement. Now, the end of the story is that probably a year or two later, I was in a store somewhere, and a girl walks in, and it was her, which I didn't know. I don't think I recognized her, but she said, I don't know if you remember me, but I met you in that one nightclub, and I was really in a lot of pain, and I was really probably pretty inappropriate. And I know I said some inappropriate things. I said, oh, that's all right, And she said, no, really, I wanted you to know this. She said, and I said all these things, and you leaned forward and you said something in my ear, and it changed my life. Now, I don't remember what I said. And in a way, that's kind of cool, because it's not important. All I know is that it came from the right place. I didn't say, you know what you need? Me. I didn't say, you need to get laid. I didn't say, you need another drink. I didn't say, hey, would you like a ride home with me? Let me be your ride tonight. I didn't play any games like that. I didn't do the things people would do when someone's in a vulnerable state. And that's why when you're on the rebound, you're charged. There's something going on. You need someone who can see it and respond properly to it. But if you're not going to have enough integrity to want that, then you're not going to likely attract people that could see that. So I'm glad that she, attracted something different that moment. And I had things like that happen, I've shared those stories in a class we did on sacred sexuality, but, I had an incident like that where one night these couple of guys that recognized me because I was sitting there and they had seen me a couple times, these younger guys, because I was probably pushing 30 and they were probably in their early 20s. So I was the older guy at this place. And, wow. And, they came over to me and they said, hey, listen, man, do you recognize that girl? No. She's a big model. Oh, nice, whatever. And, and they go, well, she's interested in you and she's asking us to introduce. I said, no, don't introduce her. They're like, no, come on, dude. No, they go, come on, man. She's expecting it. She asked us and we're doing it as a favor. So they brought her over and, she was, getting buzzed and expressing strong interests in me. And like the other girl, I eventually see you later. And the guys were like, what do you mean you're leaving? You have a drunk model and you're leaving? And I said, yeah. So I split. Well, these guys knew where I lived and they brought her over, knocked on the door and I ignored it. They pounded, I ignored it. They kicked it and I ignored it. And finally I just like, oh man, they got this drunk girl outside my door. So I went, opened the door. What's going on? They said, well, she wanted to, she like stumbles in. And she wanted to, be with you, see ya. And they all ran giggling, It's like, wow, unbelievable. So the end of this story was she expressed all her interests and all that. But all I did was took her to my room where I slept and put her in bed and covered her up and went and slept on the floor in the other room. And true story, and it was interesting because she was on the rebound as well. And it doesn't mean everybody looks this needy on the rebound. I'm not implying that. I'm only saying be careful of any variations or versions of being on the rebound. It's not when you're at your best. You're not your clearest to make healthy decisions about short-term or long-term goals. And this was a funny story because the next weekend I was back there and those guys showed up. They're like, so what happened, man? I'm like, nothing. Come on, tell us I'm like, guys, don't do that. Don't ever do that again. And they kind of assumed more had happened. But in came the girl. They go, there she is again. She had this pretty large boyfriend with her, apparently. And they came walking in. The guys were like, uh-oh. I'm like, what? They're like, she's with a guy. I'm like, great. Like, boyfriend and now jealousy, or what's going to happen now? They walked over and he said, are you Michael? I'm like, yeah. And he said, I had to come here tonight. And it doesn't sound good at all, man. It sounds like this is going to go very badly. I had to come here tonight. This is my sister. Now I'm thinking, that's not even a reprieve or relief. That's like, uh-oh. And he said, and I told her I insisted on coming here today to meet her, to meet the guy that had her at his house. She was drunk and you didn't take advantage of her. This is what the guy said to me, her brother. And he shook my hand and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm glad to help, whatever. But we're not always going to attract people that would, be there for us. When I was on the rebound after marriage, it was a very challenging rebound because we didn't hate each other. There wasn't enough going on to really launch me into, never, never land in a negative sense, nega land. it didn't do that. So we were confused about whether we're together or not. And that confused other people around us even, I think, whether we're available or not. And we weren't even sure because we were friends, because we're close. So be careful, because the rebounds have what's considered stimulation, excitement, pizzazz. I've been with a person who's been same old every night. Oh, that person, they're smelly socks and they're constant watching ball games or they're whatever. And I'm just talking about the girls. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't look good. And then there's somebody who's always clean when they see them. They're always showered and well kept when they see them. Their hair's always in place when they see them. Always a little whatever, colognes. I don't think I've ever worn cologne before, but those kinds of aftershaves or colognes or whatever the guys wear, or perfumes the girls wear. It's just like, wow, I can have that compared to that. It always looks good. But remember, those guys weren't changing diapers with your kids the way your partner was, and the real life stuff. Nobody was, dabbing down foreheads that were fevered, and you didn't have that stuff. So you're in the trenches sometimes with the person. I'm not saying your marriages are always great. I'm just saying don't expect the other that looks all polished to be that in the trenches. Typically, those who are best at being your rebound relationships would be the worst at being committed relationships, because the very energy they hold is rebound for a reason. It's like saying, hi, I'm here to play a role. I'm here to be your rebound. And that I'm good at. Non-committed, shallow, whatever it's going to be. Sex or hype of some kind. So you're hiring them for that. The other one you hired and got into a committed or partnered or marital relationship with. And that's what you got with them, which sometimes is stale. The other one's all stimulus. And if they got stale, it would almost be more like the other kind, and you would want to trade them in for another because you need stimulus. Why? Because you're pissed off, you're angry, you're hurt, and you want something unlike that. Not to mention, if they acted out during your partnership, you're going to get them back. You're going to, get a little yourself. And I've known people who have done this even still within the same relationship, where the relationship's marital and goes a little stale, and then something happens to spice it up. They call it, putting the pizzazz back in your relationship. Whether that's because you went on some, honeymoon, a second honeymoon, it helps for about a week and a half, Wow, the spice is back, and then back to sleep again. It could be because somebody has an affair, and then that brings in attention, an angst, and sometimes that triggers us. It's almost like a death, because it's a death of the marriage or the death of your concept of a committed relationship, because they weren't faithful, so it's the death of it. And then that causes you to almost like have a reaction, adrenaline, that seems like you're re-stimulating the relationship. I tell couples that's not going to last because it's not real. It's a reaction still. Reactions always fade. It's quick burning fuel. So, there's a lot of hurt. And so even these folks that have stayed with the same partner, they'll go through a period of intensity, like almost like, wow, we're having the best sex we've ever had. We're having the most fun we've ever had. It's kind of riding on a trauma. Even the death of a loved one can stimulate that after the sadness, guilt, and stuff kind of wears off. All that heavy stuff wears off. Sometimes there's a strange energy that rises that launches us into trying to find a new life. That's not how the new life is found. It's an unhealthy life, but it's not a new spiritual or better life. So as I'm going to start to wrap up, I'm basically saying that rebounds in all regards are unhealthy, but I do understand the points of it that sort of symbolize or represent what could be healthy, an ounce of healthiness. But I'm saying it's a symbol of healthiness, meaning there could be a drop of it here and there, a moment of it here and there. I know the longing is deep, so I understand it. So how can we hold you in that space? How can we hold you in that longing to where you don't harm yourself or anyone else? So whether gay or straight relationships, they're It's unhealthy to go and vent. That's what it comes down to. You're venting. You're trying to compensate. You're trying to get back. And you're trying to get sometimes back at years you lost yourself. Not just revenge on a partner, but just even if your partner dies or divorces, sometimes you just want to get back. And that's a lot of what midlife crisis is about. The guy with the whatever his new red Ferrari or whatever these cars, and starting to go to the gym and lose weight and then get some younger girl, whatever, compared to the wife he's had. It humiliates the wife for various reasons, valid and not so valid. But the guy doesn't really care because wow, I found a girl who likes me more. No, she doesn't. You have a stimulation, not a realization, revelation, not anything profound. You just have stimulation. But it seems like that man is paying attention to me at work. My husband doesn't. That woman is doing such and such. She'll do things my wife won't do anymore. Oh, those are very stereotypical. But they're pretty lame too, because they're just shallow. Just because your ego says you deserve doesn't mean you deserve. Your spiritual self says, well, deserve what? What is it we deserve that we don't have? If we own it. And so my greatest warning to you is this. If you're going to have the rebound kind of relationship, please remember this. Fine, do it. And even if it feels wonderful, fine. He did a little more. And you had your first orgasm, or the first one in a while, or you got stimulated. He kissed you more passionately than the other, and so on. They're all just games, incidentally. But what's got to happen is to realize it's not them. It's you. You had the orgasm. You allowed it. You awakened. You felt more. You got excited. You enjoyed dancing. Don't make it they. He did this for me. He brought me out of my shell. Don't make them saviors when in fact all they are is predators, because that's most of the time what they are. Once in a blue moon, maybe once every alternate leap year, you will have someone who was not meaning to be a predator, but they too were kind of saying, I'm looking as well. Don't excuse the average ones you've had as one of those. That must have been what I had. A real good integrity guy. The odds are so slim, I wouldn't bank on it. Because the whole energy is predatorial. When you come out of a relationship all wounded and bleeding in pain, then you're using an ego guidance system to take you somewhere instead of God guidance system. You're using an ego guidance system that takes you to nightclubs and whatever. That can't really go well. And it never really symbolizes anything of your higher good. It's not God. It's not your highest good. It's wounds. So it's much like wounded. Oh, I'm bleeding internally, energetically. And then you go and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to launch myself into a new life. And so you get in the proverbial new, the river of life or the boat, and you row yourself into a new life. I'm just gonna move out into the ocean because there are more fish in the sea, as they say. Remember, I started with you're wounded, you're bleeding, and you're out rowing and rowing out to the sea of life, and there's more fish in the sea than my ex, and you jump into that sea of life, and you found that there are more fish in the sea. They're called sharks, and so they devour you, and then you're in therapy. Oh, why did they, or you're embarrassed to even go to therapy because you don't know why the guy hurt you like that, why he used you. He's a shark. That's what the hell they do. Why are you dumbfounded? When you're bleeding, you don't look at a tank of piranha and go, oh, look at the cutie fish, and not expect them to chomp on your finger. And if you did act surprised, I would have to question your sanity, which is exactly what I do when people act out like this in terms of, hurtful behaviors to themselves or others. And I don't even have to go into date, rape, drugs, and all the other things that go along with some of these locations that you're calling the pond, the dating pool. It's not a dating pool. It's a piranha pool. It's a shark fest, man, and it's not great. I'm not saying don't come out. I'm saying when you come out of a rebound, a relationship, first, take a break, breathe. Second, take some time to do some work. Third, When you're ready to come out a day at a time. After having done some work, know your patterns, know what you're about, and come out a day at a time, meaning pace yourself. Don't leap into, some form of hypersexual kind of thing. And I know, some of you are going to say, well, I did that and I'm glad I did. I found my sexuality. I did, sometimes it's understandable in some ways, and sometimes it's very nice because, like I said when I started, you didn't stay paralyzed. That, in that sense, it's great. But even if you're going to push it and try to convince me that it's wonderful, all I'm going to ask you is to not credit the other person. It's transference. It's denying your own goodness. It's all kinds of healthy things embedded in that. Do not credit them. Worst of all, you're actually inflating the ego of the guy, I was her first. All you're doing is taking him back to high school or whatever when he got to have sex with a virgin. Yeah, man, I was her first. That is a wonderful little notch in the belt of those kinds of guys. You became one of those. Don't tell me that it's a wonderful thing. Don't try to justify the behavior, because I know what the guys are thinking. I was her first orgasm. He's not going, wow, namaste, goddess. I'm just so honored to have been part of the vessel of your healing. I was part of the chalice of you coming into yourself. No, guys, come on. It's like dun 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 dun. That's what it is. The sound is not one of angels, it's one of sharks. And, justify it. And if you're justifying it, you're really, and I've known people to do this, that jump right back into their propensities for sex again and again and again, or on the third date or what, just prematurely. I'm not judging them, I'm not hating them, I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying, I know, and some of them go, crap, I did it again. But others will say, no, this is wonderful. And they have to kind of suck it up and kind of convince me, because they're trying to convince themselves that it's okay, it's real, this is really a great guy for them and all that. When I know that it's next to impossible for it to be, because you didn't take time enough to be healthy yourself. So it's almost impossible to have been healthy with anyone else or to attract a healthy anyone else. So, I hope that makes sense, but don't credit them. You don't realize it, but you're inflating their ego. And I think that that's dangerous, because then that enables them and perpetuates it and makes them think, wow, that gal just was so digging me. I got to do that again because I got high on her excitement. And I've seen those kinds of things. When I went to that nightclub a few times here and there to listen to music, I found myself, they didn't know who I was, but I would still sit there and give advice without people knowing it. They would ask questions, how do you know these things? Oh, I don't know, but, I would just be casual and tactful about it, but giving advice. So do your best to ask for advice, see a counselor, ask God. I'm not saying you guys have to become nuns or something. I'm not saying you have to become celibates. Not that either of those are a problem. For the right people, it's the right thing. But I'm not saying you have to go to that extreme. I'm just saying find your way of coming out. To be quite honest, I remember when I did that, when I was married and then not married and coming out and that sort of thing. What I'm glad I did right, so to speak, is I never lost track that it was me. If I was going to even be intimate with anyone, it wasn't, oh, they're so magical. They love me in a way that my wife didn't love me. I wasn't going to project and transfer anything. I was just really clear. I'm exploring myself. I got married as a kid and never dated or anything like that. And so here I was available, but just what am I doing? Never wore form-fitting clothes. So I'm just being honest and telling you, it's kind of an experiment. It was really, really peculiar, kind of shy and insecure in a way, the way a kid would be, because I'm a kid, because I got married. And so you sort of go into a different dimension. you're doing marital stuff. You never finished, if you do things like this, like me, you never finish that developmental period, young adulthood. Or you did it in a marital form rather than a dating form, which is just another form. It's neither good nor bad, it's just a different form. So I didn't do that other form. So now I'm 30 trying to date. But yet I wasn't interested in dating because for various reasons. But am I going to date? And what would it look like? Who would I date? Why would I date? And for me, what happened is creating a safe container, which I still use today. Having an intimate friend or intimate friends, even plural, was a wonderful place to explore because I know what it is and what it isn't. And we can let go within that parameter. So that's partly what I mean by pace yourself. Come out. Make sure you understand that it's you. It isn't the magic of some other person. I never went, more than 2% maybe, more into somebody else is better and magical. And no, how could anybody have the magic? Because if I'm shut down, they could be magical and I could shut them down. If I'm ready to open, they could be shut down. And if I'm ready to open, I'm just going to be ready to open. We have to own when we're ready. We do things. Don't just like when people watch me as a teacher. I love the compliments. Thank you, Michael. This was wonderful. Michael did this for me. That's great. It's not just great for me to be told that. It's great for you to say it because you're owning that you have revelations and insights. That's good for you. But if you ever were to say, and Michael, now that I found your teachings, I'm much happier. If you said these words, and I cannot be happy without your teachings, I would say no, not allowed. And I would take it back to you and say, how can we make you understand that you can be and that you are happy? I'm just a reflection. So I would never want to take that on from a person, their power. And I've talked, done talks about the truth about giving up our power, the real story and all that. So if you want to, watch more of that, that would be fine. But please, in a sense, I'm saying inflate yourself. Don't inflate the ego of another person. I know it's challenging to have gone through what you've gone through. I know it's challenging to have felt, things kind of stuck or left out. I was married, a person that had been abused, so that made some things challenging. Had kids that put certain limits and time towards certain things. So there were certain areas that I could say weren't there. But if I could push a button and not have done it, I wouldn't do that. Because that was a wonderful friendship, partnership, and parental thing with my kids. So that was perfect for what it was. It closes. Now, whatever else I'm going to do, I'm going to make it perfect for what it is. What most people won't do, though, is say, they're going to say rather, I would like to have had a great marriage, but they were messed up. My partner was this, my partner was that. Why aren't you saying, why did I attract them? Why was I interested? What attracted me? Oh, well, some of them are going to say, well, they fooled me. Okay, they fooled what part of you? Do you think they really could fool the psychic part of you? Part of you knew. It was a convenience. If you had low self-esteem, it was fine to get a partner that was going to not build you up your esteem. If you had sexual insecurities, it might be that you had a partner that was going to trigger those in some way. In my life has been greatly about wanting to bring healing to the world. And one of the most challenged conversations or issues is sexuality. So I've always been this dance of spirituality, sexuality, and therefore having a partner that had any issues ever around that kind of thing was not her doing to me. I came in and had a partnership relevant to abuse so that I could hone my skills, understanding, and patience around that kind of thing, because that's me. They didn't do to me. That's me. It's already me. I wanted to come in and be a greater level of healer than typically we see in this world. Had I not gone through that with her and chose to respond the way I did, see, she didn't do it for me, to me. I chose to learn what I learned. But had I not learned those things, I don't know that I would have been as effective with the gals that came on to me in the nightclubs those couple of times. So I'm certainly an oddball in many ways. I've never been available for partnership and dating and that sort of thing, and I think that's frustrated a lot of people or confused some people because I'm not that type. I'm not, I've never seen myself as just here for that. I saw myself as, what more can I do? What more can I bring? So when I've chosen to let my hair down, so to speak, it's been really in selective kinds of forms. And even when I choose to do that, just being fun with a person or people, at times, it's still, man, it's challenged because of the stuff that comes up for people, and about love or affection or owning or possessiveness, and so it becomes very, very messy. So it's like being an archetype or a god or goddess of this topic, meaning the dance of spirituality and sexuality. I personally believe all of us are going to become that at some point. A balanced god, goddess, spiritual, sensual being that is not charged and triggered by these topics as we once were. Oh my God, that's, it's sort of a fantasy, but not in the strange fantasy way, but a fantasy in my mind. My happiest times, probably, so in the top 3 for sure, would be times when I saw people just allowing themselves to be sensual and beautiful and smiling, and just really kind of integrated with those spiritual, and I say those are important because they're root chakra and crown chakra. They're sort of opposites, so they're the most extreme. So when you can bring those together, it's fantastic. That's why I did workshops on sacred sexuality, and it's why I wrote books on it, and it's why I worked with people on it, because I refused to give in and let the topic be lost. But I did what I could do, and I think it's helped lots and lots and lots of people. But it's also challenging for some and triggered some. So I've said this before, but I retired from that work for the most part. I'm still here to help where I can, but for the most part. So be careful. Rebounds make us vulnerable. Vulnerability can make us feel used and triggered, and then that can make us sink into lower and lower places, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. If you have an end of a relationship, you have the end of a cycle, an end of something. If it was a crappy relationship, then you ended a crappy cycle. That should be good news. And if you say, I'm going to go out and make up for that, then you're still reacting to it, the negative relationship, so you're keeping it alive. You're just kind of killing it and then resuscitating it into a different form, one night stand. Well, he looks different. It doesn't matter. He sounds different. He seems different. It doesn't matter. He's still a kind of a projection from your relationship. You're giving life to, it's like a horror movie. You're giving life to this one night stand or the usury kinds of relationships. You're giving life to them from the blood that was spilt in the other kind of relationship. Wow, this sounds really beautiful, doesn't it? Very poetic. But it's true. It's how it goes. Come out and heal. Take your time. See through the games. Like I was saying, opportunities were there. It didn't mean, well, it must be meant to be. Oh, look, a drunk girl. I guess it's sent from God. Guys, don't try to justify things like that. Well, it was meant to be. I met this guy, and I even had a dream that I was going to meet a guy named, Lance LaRue. And Lance LaRue said, hey, my name is Lance LaRue, and I'm here to do you. And you think, wow, that's so synchronistic. Don't buy into it, guys. Don't be so shallow and silly. I'm not saying you have to work as hard as maybe I did at keeping all this, balanced, because I've always been really conscientious. So it took a lot of work for me to dance the dance of this stuff. It's been a lot of my life, dancing the dance with how much to do and not do, where to go and what not to go, where not to go, what to do and with whom, and to teach, to not teach this class, to write that book, to not write that book. Boy, that's just been taxing in so many ways. But when I can share topics like this, like a snippet of the big picture of what I know on this topic of dating, sexuality, sensuality, boundaries, romance, rebound, when I can take a snippet and put it in a talk like this and hear any amount of you folks going, wow, I was almost going to go there and now I get it. That, you understand, that adds feathers to my wings and takes me higher into the heavens while I'm alive and after I pass. It's true. Yeah, it's very beautiful and meaningful when we can help people see through the stuff of this world, the stuff that so easily deceives. It's so sad that they can get misled into thinking it's normal, so do it. Guys, who's telling you that? There's a saying, when you tell a big enough lie often enough, people will believe it. So when you hear people telling you it's normal to get used, to be used, to use others, to do one night stands and so on, they're all lying to you. I'm telling you, they're lying to you. It's not congruent with your heart and soul. Your heart and soul would say, even if we did share only one night with a person, if it's love and respect, there's no more you need to hear from me on it. No lecture. No, it was the wrong way. You're not going to hear that. Love and respect, nobody should question it. It's just usually it's not love and respect. And so, power to you, whatever decision you're making. But please do your best to anchor in more light and bring a different world to especially future generations. Let's tell them something different about this, okay? I hope. I pray. Thanks.